Did you know that a young noblewoman from Hungary tortured and killed hundreds of young girls? What drives a person to become one of history's most infamous killers? In today's video, we dive deep into the chilling life of Elizabeth Báthory, a woman who has been called the Blood Countess. But how much of her story is fact? How much is legend? Stay with us as we unravel the truth behind one of history's most terrifying figures who may have bathed in blood to stay young, or may have been the victim of one of history's most elaborate conspiracies. Let's find out. Chapter 1. Who was Elizabeth Báthory? Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 into one of Hungary's most powerful and influential noble families. Her family was not only wealthy but held tremendous power, with connections to royalty. You see, the Báthory family was no ordinary aristocracy. They shaped the political landscape of Eastern Europe for centuries. Elizabeth was born into privilege, but her life took a turn that would leave her name forever etched in blood. Her marriage at age 15 to Countess, a soldier famed for his cruelty on the battlefield, only strengthened her standing in Hungarian nobility. Together, they owned a staggering number of estates, but the jewel of their holdings was Countess Castle, a fortress that would become infamous for its alleged horrors. However, behind the walls of luxury and power, something darker was brewing. And it's here, at Countess, that the terrifying legend of Elizabeth Báthory begins. Chapter 2. The allegations begin. By the early 1600s, rumours began circulating about strange happenings at Countess Castle. Servants would disappear, never to be seen again, and whispers of torture began to spread. But it wasn't just the disappearances that caused fear. Those who dared to speak out claimed that Elizabeth herself was behind the atrocities. The allegations were nothing short of horrifying. Young women, primarily peasant girls from surrounding villages, were said to have been lured to the castle with the promise of employment. Once inside, it is claimed that these girls were subjected to unspeakable acts, beaten, burned, mutilated. But what stands out most in the accounts is one terrifying detail: Elizabeth's supposed obsession with blood. The rumors evolved into something more sinister. They said Elizabeth Báthory was bathing in the blood of virgins to maintain her youth and beauty. This shocking claim is what earned her the nickname the Blood Countess. But how much of this was true? And how much was exaggerated to create a monster? Chapter 3. The Trial and the Dark Truth. In 1610, King Matthias II of Hungary ordered an investigation into the Countess after reports of her crimes became impossible to ignore. What they found inside Countess Castle shocked even the most hardened investigators. The testimonies of over 300 witnesses were collected, detailing horrific torture methods allegedly used by Elizabeth. It was claimed she would drive needles under her victims' fingernails, bite chunks of flesh from their bodies, and even cover them in honey to be devoured by insects. One of the most shocking aspects of her case was that many of her victims were not lowly peasants but young women from noble families, sent to her for education. This made the scandal impossible to contain. It wasn't just the lower classes suffering anymore. It was now the daughters of Hungary's elite. Elizabeth was arrested in December of 1610, and her trial was unlike any other in history. Unlike most accused of such crimes, she wasn't immediately executed, likely because of her noble status. Instead, she was sentenced to life imprisonment in her own castle. But here's the curious twist: Elizabeth herself was never allowed to testify, nor was she given a fair trial. In fact, some historians suggest that the testimonies against her were heavily influenced by political motives. Could it be that Elizabeth Báthory was the victim of a conspiracy, orchestrated by those jealous of her power and wealth? Chapter 4. The Real Elizabeth Báthory. Here's where the mystery deepens. Historians today still debate the extent of her guilt. Was Elizabeth Báthory truly a monster, or was she a pawn in a larger political game? After all, Hungary at the time was a hotbed of political intrigue, with powerful families vying for control. By discrediting Elizabeth and stripping her of her properties, her enemies stood to gain tremendous wealth and influence. King Matthias himself owed Elizabeth a substantial sum of money. Could it be that her arrest was a convenient way to avoid paying his debt? There are even theories suggesting that many of the accusations against her were exaggerated or fabricated entirely by those who stood to benefit. Some argue that the tales of her bathing in blood, for instance, were more a reflection of the superstitions and fears of the time than actual events. However, despite the doubts, the physical evidence, discovered bodies and tortured victims, cannot be easily dismissed. What is certain is that Elizabeth Báthory's legacy as a torturer and murderer has been solidified in history. But whether she was truly the Blood Countess, or merely a scapegoat for political gain, remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. Chapter 5: Elizabeth's Final Days. After her trial, Elizabeth Báthory spent the rest of her life in solitary confinement. She was bricked into a small set of rooms within Countess castle, with only tiny slits in the walls for food and air. For 4 years, she lived in complete isolation, before dying in 1614 under mysterious circumstances. Her death was quiet, especially considering the magnitude of her alleged crimes. She was buried in a nearby church, though her body was soon moved, likely out of fear that her grave would be desecrated by those who hated her. To this day, her final resting place remains unknown, adding yet another layer of mystery to her already infamous story. Chapter 6: Legacy of Horror. Elizabeth Báthory's name has become synonymous with evil, and she has inspired countless legends, books, films, and even vampire lore. Some say she was worse than Dracula himself. But what makes her story so captivating, even centuries later, is the blend of fact and fiction. Was she a sadistic killer obsessed with youth and beauty, or the victim of a plot designed to bring down one of Hungary's most powerful women? Whatever the truth may be, Elizabeth Báthory's tale is a reminder of the darker side of human nature and the extremes to which power, paranoia, and fear can drive us. Her story has become a legend, but behind every legend is a grain of truth. The question remains: how much of Elizabeth's story is true, and how much is an exaggeration created by history? Conclusion: Elizabeth Báthory's name will forever be linked to horror. But her life raises questions that we may never fully answer. Was she a monster? Or was she a woman caught in the web of power, greed, and superstition? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you found this video intriguing, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history's most mysterious figures, and click the bell to stay updated on our latest content. Thanks for watching, and until next time.